So today we're having a special guest by the name of George Mount. So I'll read a little bit about his profile and you'll get to know about what he's going to be presenting today. So George Mount is the founder and CEO of Stringfest Analytics. He's also the author of Advancing into Analytics. So for today's presentation, he'll be demonstrating basically about key statistic concepts from spreadsheets and to show users how to pivot existing knowledge into R and Python. Attendees will pick up framework in analytics stack and see how to complement their existing Excel knowledge. The presentation generally is based on George Mount's new book, which is titled Advancing into Analytics from Excel to Python and R. So I'll be heading back to the section and giving all presentation back to George Mount. So, George Mount, this session is being recorded. First, the session is being recorded for academic purposes and everything. So I'll be handing over to you now, so you can start doing your presentation. So I'll close my screen and you can share yours.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I will, yes, get started with my screen share here. And okay. There we go. All right. I think everybody can see that. Cool. So thank you again for coming. What I would suggest, if you'd like to follow along, I want to make this as interactive as possible today. So you're going to see a link, and I will put this in the chat as well. Click through to this repo, and let me try to put that in the chat. A lot of windows open. There it is. Okay, so you'll put that in the chat. I put it in the chat, I mean, and you will go to it. And if you go here, now this is going to have all of the resources that I'm going to cover today. And way down here at the bottom, there are actually, this repo is finalized, so you can proceed without caution. You can click these two buttons if you want to follow along. I'm asking you to do this now because it takes a while to load these. So what these are going to do is let you run R and Python on your computer without downloading anything. This is a cloud-based environment. So if you click these two buttons, and you'll want to click both of them, you're going to see that once you do that, it's going to spin the wheel, and this is going to take a few minutes. So do that now if you'd like to follow along. If you have any problems with this, if you see an error for whatever reason, just try it again. Sometimes people, for whatever reason, the system times out or something like that. It's really nothing to do with your computer. Maybe, you know, if you're having internet problems, it might time out or whatnot. So just click on that, and then you'll be able, and then maybe even later on after the presentation, I might not get into everything. I probably have more resources than we can cover today. So you can come back here and play around with the stuff that was covered today. And I'm going to get rid of the line saying that it's under construction, because it's not anymore. It's live. So that's done. Okay. Any questions about that? If you do, just let me know and I'll try to help you. But I think you should just be able to click through it. Like I said, it should take some time, so you can ask any questions that you have now. One of the questions that I have for you is, like I mentioned to the hosts here, I don't know if I'm going to have time to get to everything in the book. So basically, there are 3 sections in the book, and what I'd like to know is what section of the book you're interested in most, because I can probably cover 2 of them right now. So what I'm going to do is Foundations of Analytics in Excel is the first one, and then from Excel to R is the second one, then Excel to Python is the third one. So these are 3 sections of the book. Now, I just listed them in the chat, and just put a like or whatever reaction next to the one that you're, or maybe the 2 that you're most interested in. And I will kind of tailor the presentation based on that, since I probably, like I said, don't have enough time to get into all of them. Cool. Okay, so I see people's responses coming in. I'll give everybody a couple of minutes to do that, or maybe less. Okay, so we're off to the races here. Cool. Yes. So I see a couple of chats coming in. It looks like Python is pretty popular. There's some people are interested in the Excel part. Okay. So that's good to know. So what I might do is talk about foundations of analytics in Excel and then get into Python. So thanks everybody for the feedback. I think I can adjust here and we'll be good. So that's great. All right. Thank you for your feedback there. Let me continue with my slides. All right. So hopefully this is still running in the background. You click through the links here and that they're going to keep running. It might take a few minutes, so we have some time to talk, and I'm going to give away a book in a minute here too. So what are we going to do today? Well, like our host mentioned, we are going to situate Excel within the data analytics stack and give you a very clear learning path to get into, I guess today, Python, but also R if you're interested, and take those skills that you have and really make that learning path as painless as possible, because these are programming languages. They can be hard to learn, but I think as an Excel user, you know a lot more about programming and a lot more about data than you're often given credit for. So in this class, I really want to help you get there quickly. Our unofficial learning objectives is first to have fun. I hope that at this presentation you're going to enjoy what we're doing, and I'll have a few apps and interactions and things like that I think you'll find enjoyable. The other thing is that maybe you'll want a book. As I mentioned, I have 3 copies of this now. I don't know. O'Reilly is the name of my publisher. Based on where you are, I can either get you a paper copy or an ebook. So what you'll do, and I'll put my name, my email in the chat here. So if you win, just drop me an email and let me know your address and email and all that stuff. I guess I'll have your email because you had sent it to me. But I'll be able to get you either a paper copy or an ebook. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask the first trivia question, and if you get it, you'll win a book. Now, I'm assuming that most of you aren't in the United States, and if you are, I might ask you to hold back on answering this question because it's a geography question about the United States. So you'd be at an unfair advantage, I guess, if you know where I am. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and that's in sort of the middle of the country. And I'm curious if anybody knows, if you can name any other city in the state of Ohio, and no cheating, just put it in the chat. And whoever can name another city in Ohio besides Cleveland, you'll get a copy of the book, and we'll see how this goes. And if nobody can answer, then I'll ask another question. Okay, that's pretty close. We'll see if anybody can think of something else. Okay, I'm going to go with the second, Klenum. Okay, so Oleg Benga was pretty close. Cuyahoga is the county where Cleveland is. I don't think there's any city. If Oleg Benga, if you can prove me wrong that there is a city called Cuyahoga in Ohio, there's a Cuyahoga Falls and there's some other ones. It's pretty close. But I think I'm going to go with the second one. So Clenum, if you can send me and wow, we're getting a lot of them. We're getting more than I thought. So that's people know Ohio. I'm assuming a lot of people knew Akron because of LeBron. Usually when I'm overseas and I say I'm from Ohio, people know about it because of LeBron James. So all right, so I'm gonna have Clenum, if you can send me an email. And Oleg Benga, don't get too, hopefully you'll get one raffle to you. You were very close. And maybe we'll make an exception here if you can find one named Cuyahoga. Okay, so thanks everybody for participating in that. And I think there actually might be a Texas, Ohio. You're right. And Ashland, that's one. Bellbrook, I think there is a suburb. So this is, I think everybody knows more cities in Ohio than me. So this worked pretty well, actually. Okay, so there's the first trivia question. And we're going to raffle away a couple more later on. Okay, so we talked about that. Okay. All right, we did this. So what I think we're going to do is talk about data analytics in Excel, and then we're going to get into Python. Now, I don't really have much slides about Excel. We're just going to jump into a data set. And then I'll skip the stuff for R. I would encourage you to check it out. It's a good programming language to know. You don't hear about it as much anymore, but I really enjoy R. And I think if you're interested in statistical analysis, it's a very good program to know. So what is data analytics and what is the data analytics stack? Now, this slide came from my book, Advancing into Analytics. And essentially what I'm showing here are 4 elements of tools that we use, for data analytics. So I was trying to find my clicker here. So we have spreadsheets, which we all know and love and are valuable components of working with data analytics. There are certain benefits to spreadsheets, but spreadsheets can't do everything. So we're going to get into data programming languages. Some of the things that make this useful and worth knowing. I think there was a question, I believe Hassan was asking, what's the difference between Excel versus Python or R? Now, in many cases, you can combine these tools together, and depending on time, we will look at a case there. I think that Python and R give you a lot of reach out into different packages and different use cases. There are some things that are just better to do in Python or R, some things that are better to do than Excel. So it's really not a question of which one is better. It's just kind of like they're different and depending on the use case. Now, generally, if you have something where you want to get it out to the end user, you want the end user to be able to interact and put in their own data and give them a real eye-level view of what's going on with the model, then spreadsheets are great for that. Spreadsheets are also great for just prototyping and trying things out. They're very flexible. That's why we all like Excel. You're really able to do anything with Excel. That can be a good thing or a bad thing. Data programming languages, something like R or Python, they're going to be a little more rigid. There are going to be some more rules and controls in place, which depending on what you want to do, could be a good thing. If you're going to build some kind of a prediction system or something like that, or build a pretty advanced statistical model, you'll probably want to have some rules in place for the language. And in that case, a programming language might be a better choice than Excel. And then, there's databases, there's BI platforms. I'm not going to get into those in this presentation, but those are other elements. I like to think of these 4 slices as different parts of our stack of tools. You hear about developers or database administrators. They talk about being a full stack developer, but I think that we could be a full stack data analyst. And what that means is using these 4 slices together and building data products together. And if there are any questions, I'll try to keep my eye on the chat. We can have, if Michael wants to jump in with any questions, then I'm happy to answer those as well. So I want to make this as interactive as possible today. Okay, the other thing with Python and R is that they're open source programming languages. If you're not familiar with that idea, it means that anybody is free to use them. So Python is totally free. You're able to redistribute it, contribute your own packages to it. And if you're familiar with Microsoft's strategy, historically, they weren't very keen on working with open source packages. They viewed it as a threat. But as of late, they're a lot more receptive to working with open source. For example, we have the GitHub repo that I shared with you. GitHub used to not go well with Microsoft, but Microsoft bought GitHub. And also, you'll see, so I think this is from Power BI. there's an option in Power Query. You can actually run Python and R scripts inside of that. We're not going to get into that today, but you could take the skills that you learned today and use Python in particular to include in your Power Query script here. Another example here is that in Power BI, you can include R and Python visualizations. And if anybody's done that before, I'd be curious to know. I do have, I think I do, a Power BI file that has an R and Python visualization. But if not, you can look online and see that. That's another place that you can combine some of the skills that we're going to learn today. Yeah, so there's a comment that Edge is based on Chromium. So yes, so open source is really all around us. And I think that it's good to know a little bit about what that means and what the disadvantages and advantages are of it. Okay, so again, in this class, I really want to show you how to take the skills that you have that you do all the time in Excel, sorting, filtering, VLOOKUPs, XLOOKUP now, I suppose, working with columns, calculating columns. So those are all skills that regardless of what language you're in, you're going to do over and over and over. You do them in Excel, you'll be able to do them easily enough in Python if you have that mentality and you're able to take all of those skills and see really clearly that I'm doing the same thing, I'm just doing it in a different language. All right, now I have this demo here. I think I'm going to skip this one and I'm going to get into another Excel example. This is a famous kind of thought experiment in statistics called the Monty problem. If you're interested, you're certainly welcome to do that. But it sounds like there's some interest in learning a bit about data analysis in Excel. So I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to go to a file in the, let me get situated here. You're going to find a file called, oh, maybe I don't have it. No, I have it right here, I think. Okay, so we're going to go to this computers file. And let me go back to the repo so everybody knows where to get this one. Okay. So I'm back in the repo. Now, if you haven't clicked through this yet, then please do so you're able to follow along in a bit here. We're going to start with an Excel file. I'm going to go to data sets. So I've got a few data sets in here that we'll be using in the presentation. The first one, I'm going to go to this computers.xlsx file. Now you can download it here, and this will just download to your local computer. And I'm going to do just a quick data analysis example in Excel that is based on some things that you would learn in the book. At the end of the presentation, I will give you a link to read my book for free, Advancing into Analytics. So you can check that out. You can get it at any bookseller as well, but I will give you a link if you'd like to check it out. It's a 30-day trial to read this for free. So let's start with this data set. So this data set has computer prices, and this is a somewhat older data set of computer prices because you're going to see that one of the columns here is a CD. So whether the data set has a CD-ROM installed. A lot of computers don't have CD-ROMs anymore, but this is an older data set. Now, what I want to find out is, does that matter to the price of the computer? So does having a CD-ROM affect the price of the computer? So let's find that out. This is good. This is a good statistics style problem. Now, to do this, I'm going to use the data analysis tool pack. If you do not have that, I would encourage you to get it on your computer. I'm going to put a link in the downloads here to do that. I should have put instructions in the slides, but I kind of changed my mind last minute about what I wanted to present today. So thanks everybody for bearing with me. So I just put something in the chat to download the data analysis tool pack. If you do not have it on your computer, you can work on that now or do it later on. But we're going to answer the question, does having a CD-ROM affect the sales price of the computer? So I'm going to do a couple of things here. First of all, I'm going to put this into a pivot table because this is going to help us. What we want to be able to do is field out the records that do and do not have a CD-ROM and compare their sales prices. So, you could maybe sort this data and filter it and do a lot of manual manipulation to clean it in that sense. But I think using a pivot table makes this a lot easier here. Basically, what I'm going to do is I have this ID number. I think that having an ID field, when you get into R and Python, you're going to see that every data set automatically has an ID number like this, especially Python. There's something called an index column that every data set's going to have. And unfortunately, Excel doesn't always have that. And I like to include an index column in any data set I'm working with because it's really helpful to slice and dice our data. For example, you're going to see that this works really well with a pivot table because now we have a nice row field to sort our data by. So I put the ID in the rows here. Now what I'm going to find out is whether each of these records has a CD-ROM or not. I know this is a kind of dated example, but this is the same type of analysis. If you've done A/B testing on a website, what feature, does this website convert better with or without this font? This is the same idea. This is just a nice data set that I like to use. So I'm going to put my price here. And essentially what you're going to see is that each record, we're going to see that observation 1 doesn't have a CD-ROM and it sells for $14.99, so on and so forth. So this was able to sort our data in a pretty easy way. And now I'm just going to get rid of the totals because we don't need them and it could mess up our analysis in a bit. So I'm going to turn that off. So we've processed our data using a pivot table. Now what I want to do is check what the average price is for no's and yeses for having and not having a CD-ROM. I'm going to use the toolpack to do that. You could use a function. There's the average function. Excel has a lot of statistics functions, but I think using the toolpack is nice because you get a lot of output instead of having to type a lot of functions. So I'm going to go up here to data analysis. Now I put that in the chat, how to download this to your computer if you don't have it. It is a free add-in. It's available for Mac or Excel, so you can do that, and it shouldn't take too long. In fact, maybe I can just do it right now. I'll go to, actually, I want to go to File, Options, and then Add-ins. You're going to go down here to Excel Add-ins, and then there's going to be one analysis tool pack. Now, there's a VBA option. You do not need to check that on. Solver, you may as well check that on now because that's a popular one to use too. And I'm going to click OK. And once you do that, you should be able to go over to data and see it over here on the side. It's pretty similar on Mac, so you can check the instructions if you have a Mac. Without further ado here, let's go to data analysis. I'm going to go to Descriptive Statistics. And now what I'm going to do is take our data here. What I want to do is take our entire list of no's and yeses. So I actually find this easier. I'm going to select column A. Control-Shift down, that selects that whole column. I want columns B and C because these are our ID columns. These aren't really data. We don't really want to take an average ID field. That doesn't really make sense. We want to get an average of sales with and without a CD-ROM. So I'm just going to type right over my references there. I believe I did include the row label. So I'm going to leave that, make sure that that's checked on. And then I'm going to include this. You can include this anywhere in a new workbook, new worksheet, whatever. I'm just going to include this right here. I'm going to make sure that this is checked on summary statistics. So what I'm trying to find is what is the average of sales price for computers with or without a CD-ROM. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to click OK. That's going to get us a lot of output. Now, if we were to get a little deeper into the analysis, you can check out the book, for example, and this is going to actually walk through what all these other measures mean. So we're not going to talk about the standard error, variance, skewness, kurtosis. If you're interested, you can check out the book. And then, as I mentioned, there's a link to check it out for free if you'd like. But what we're going to be focused on right now is, okay, so it says that the average without having a CD-ROM is about $2,100. With is about $2,300. So it looks like there's a $200 increase for a computer if it has a CD-ROM or not. So that's interesting. But what we're going to see here is that, hey, there are about 6,000 records here. Now, I don't know if that is every computer ever made of all time, and that might be what I'm interested in. I want some population of computers. Maybe it's all Dell computers or all HP computers. That's another thing you have to think about. What are you really asking when you're asking the question, does having a CD-ROM affect the price? Now, usually when you have a question like that and you're trying to answer it, you don't have all of the data. You have a sample of it, right? So what I want to find out is, hey, is there a difference in the population? And to do that, we're going to have to jump from what's called descriptive statistics here into inferential statistics. Now, I'm only going to take you about halfway through this. And if you want to check it out further, then you can read the book. Just in the interest of time, I think I'll do one more part of this, and then you're welcome to continue on and read the book and actually answer the question for yourself. But you're going to find out if you read the book that there are going to be some terms and conditions to doing this. So let's say that you have a sample of computer prices and you want to find out, based on that sample, are you going to find that for the whole population? Let's say that you're an analyst at a technology company and you're doing some research on how much does it really matter for a computer to have a CD-ROM in this case. You'll have to make sure that your data meets some assumptions. Now, one of them is that there needs to be something called the central limit theorem. And if you're not familiar, that's fine. You can read the book. But the idea is that your data set at some point should meet a normal distribution in its mean. Now, that's a very tight distinction. But what we'll do right now is just take a look at how our samples appear. We want to find what looks like a bell curve. If you've ever heard that idea in statistics and social science, you may have heard of, that idea of a nice bell-shaped distribution. We're going to find that with our data. So what I want to find out is whether our sales prices appear to be distributed as a bell curve. And if that's the case, then it's probably a good sign that we'll be able to decide whether our whole population of computers have a significant sales price. Okay, so let's do that. So what I'm going to do is make another pivot table. Actually, I'm just going to go and insert another one. Sometimes it's hard to copy and paste a really big pivot table like this. So let's just go back from scratch. I'm going to insert a pivot table. I'm going to put this in the same worksheet. So we just got everything kind of put together here. And now what I want to do is find the distribution of sales prices for computers with and without the CD-ROM. So let's try this. I'm going to put CD over here. I'm going to put ID over here. And then what I'm going to do is, let's just get rid of the totals because we don't really need them. So actually, that's really the same thing that we have over here. It's just hard to copy and paste this. So I just made a new one. I'm going to insert a chart. And this looks pretty ugly. What this is showing us, if we think about this, is so we've got a sales price of 1119. We're seeing that, and I want to make this a count because summing the ID number really doesn't make sense. Now this makes more sense. So that we have one computer that sold for 1,119. We have 20 computers that sold for 1,095 or 195. 20 of them without and one with. So this is kind of like a histogram, but we don't have this data bin. So if you're familiar with the idea of a histogram, that is going to take these sales prices and we're going to group these sales prices into intervals, and we're going to count how many observations fall inside of those intervals. So we can do that pretty easily with our pivot table. We're going to right click on any of these row labels. I'm going to go to group. Now Excel is going to group it from the first observation down to the last. It's going to, by default, group it in intervals of 1,000. That might change depending on the data that you have. I'm going to change that. I'm going to put this in intervals of, let's say, $300 or let's say $250. You can always change this, so no big deal, whatever you decide. I'm going to click OK. And now we're going to see something that looks somewhat like a pivot table. So we're going to see that, you know, for example, between $1,500 and about $1,700, that there are 600 or so with no, and then about 200 with yes. This looks an awful lot like a pivot table. I'm going to just clean this up a little further so it looks even more like one. Click on any of these bars in the graph. I'm going to go to Format Data Series. And then I always get this wrong the first time, but I think I want to move this series overlap all the way to the right and then gap width all the way to the left. Okay, I did that right. And now we have a nice distribution. You can see that both of these kind of look like a bell curve. Now you're going to see, and this is the nice thing about visualizing the data, and this makes sense because you're not going to ever sell a computer for less than $0, right? So there's kind of a starting point here, and then there's always going to be computers that this is called a long tail. You know, we have got a skew to the outer limit here, where there's always going to be a computer that sells for some large amount of money. But for the most part, this looks sort of like a bell curve, right? It's got somewhat of a distribution, and most of the values center around the middle. That's telling me, and you'll get into all the specifics in the book because there's a little more to it. But this is telling me that we would be able to find, is there a difference in the entire population for the sales price? So that's all I'm going to do right now for this data set. You're welcome to continue on with it with the book. Just in the interest of time, I think we're going to get into Python. If there are any questions, you're welcome to leave that in. And I also see that Michael just dropped the roster of names to me. So what I'm going to do is give away a book right now. And again, what you'll do is just drop me an email, and I'll get that to you depending on where you are. I may have to send you an ebook, but I'll try to get you a hard copy. Now, I'm going to put all of our roster here in this wheel of names, and I'm spinning it. So whoever gets it wins a book. Okay, Jeff, are you here? Let me know that you're here, and then I'll get you one. If I don't hear from Jeff in like 5 seconds, then I'm going to spin again. 3, 2, going. Okay, I haven't heard anything. Oh, wait, no. Okay, I haven't seen. So I'm going to spin again. If you're here, make sure that you drop your name in the chat to tell me that you're here quickly. Else I'm going to assume you're not here and that I won't hear from you, and I'm going to give it to somebody else. No hard feelings. I just want to make sure the book gets to the right hands. All right, so let's spin again. Oh, there we go. Oh, are you kidding? Okay. Kingsley, are you here? Oh, okay. Okay, Japheth was here. Okay, is Kingsley here? Okay, so I don't know, maybe Kingsley's not here. Okay, so I think Japheth wins. And then I haven't heard from Kingsley, so we'll spin again at the end of the class. Oh, Kingsley's here too. Okay. All right. So I think we did our giveaway then. All right. So if the two of you can email me Okay. Okay, and then we had the one winner with Ohio and the city name. So if the three of you can email me whenever, I'll get you a book. And congratulations. And Wheel of Names is the app here. So if you ever are doing a giveaway online, that might be useful for you. Okay, so we talked about Excel and some data analysis there. I hope you picked up a couple of tips and some ideas on how to use statistics in your work. We're going to move to Python now. So if you're interested in R, I've got some slides and you're welcome to run those files for yourself. And I'm going to move to Python. Now, okay, we've got about 25 minutes. Michael told me that, maybe we can go a little longer depending. So I'm willing to stick around depending on what the interest is, but I'll start from here. Now, if you're interested in Python, here are some applications to know about. Now, again, Python is open source. So that means that anybody is free to repackage, redistribute, and use this code. You can go to python.org, and that is going to find that official source code for you. You can download it from there. However, it's a lot more common to download your copy. So if you want to download Python on your computer after this session, I have these online links for you to just click and run Python. It can take a few minutes to download Python, so I didn't want to take that class time. I just set this thing up so you click that button and you can run Python on the cloud. But if you want to run Python on your own computer, I would suggest that you download from Anaconda. I will have more resources at the end of the class for that. But Anaconda is the distribution of that code. So again, anybody is free to distribute Python code. That's what Anaconda is. It's got some benefits to doing it that way from downloading from Anaconda. One of the things that is a benefit is that it will include a Jupyter notebook. So this is what we're going to use to work with our Python code. This is a browser-based application, and you'll see that it's a real nice interface. It's easy to use, and it's very popular. You may have seen that recently there has been an integration with Jupyter Notebooks and Power BI. If anybody's used that, just let me know in the chats. I have not, but it looks pretty cool. So there are a lot of things you can do with Jupyter Notebooks. It's really not just for working with Python, but it's very popular for Python coding. So I want to give you a little tour of the Jupyter Notebook, and then depending on time, we'll get a little deeper into Python and data analysis. I also have an example if you're interested in doing something like automating an Excel workbook using Python and including analysis that you did in Python and putting it into an Excel workbook. For example, you could build a graph in Python and then insert that graph into a workbook. So there are a lot of different use cases and examples that you could take here, but we'll just start from the beginning. So again, hopefully you were able to click this early on. If you've not, you can head over to the repo and do that now because it does take a few minutes. If anybody had a problem, just try it again and it should work. It's usually not you, it's Binder. So don't take it personally if you had problems. But what we're going to see here is you should have clicked through and then you'll end up on a link here. This is a cloud-based environment for working with Jupyter Notebooks. We've got this file explorer. So again, Jupyter is a web-based. This is almost like a web app that you're running locally. Now you could run some of these files. i.pynb is the file extension for a Jupyter Notebook. That stands for IPython Notebook. So that makes sense. And we're going to make our own new notebook here. We're just going to start from scratch. What I want to show you is how to get around in the Jupyter Notebook and the basics of coding in Python. Now, again, you can spend an infinite amount of time learning Python. We'll just get through the very basics today. And I would say that my book is a good place to catch up with it next if you're interested in that. So let's create a new notebook. We're going to do a new Python notebook. You could include an R notebook as well. Like I mentioned, you can work with lots of different coding languages using a Jupyter notebook. There's an integration with Power BI, like I mentioned, with a Jupyter notebook now. So there's a lot that you can do with it, but it was originally created for R. I don't know why I got an error here. Let's try that again. Okay, so I'm having problems. I don't know if anybody else had one too. but I can just run this on my own. I have Python downloaded locally, so I'm just going to run it from there. If anybody else has a problem, if you saw something like that when you were trying to create it, then you may need to rerun that link. I don't know if something timed out. Okay, somebody says that theirs worked, so I don't know. Maybe mine, I think I had it open for too long and it just broke the connection possibly. So let me do that. So you should see something similar to what I have. You're going to see that mine's stored locally. So if you're running this on your own computer, you'll see that you almost have like a server running in the background. You're going to see that this is actually good that I'm running it locally, because you're going to see that you'll have something like this running outside of your browser. Make sure not to close this. This is actually what's powering your Python execution. You need something to communicate with Python on the back end from your Jupyter notebook, and that's what this window is for. So just don't close that if you're doing it locally. Now I'm going to insert a Python notebook here. Okay, so Hassan said he already has Anaconda, so that's cool. All right, and Tenyado says that theirs worked, so that's great too. So we're cooking with gas here. Now we're in a Jupyter notebook. You're going to see that this is a pretty simple interface. There's not a lot of buttons, which is good. It's got some basic window options here. I encourage you to play around with that. You know, you can download a local copy. These notebooks save automatically. You can make a checkpoint if you want, but you can go into all this yourself. I won't spend too much time here. Since we are in a room of Excel people, I want to make sure that you know that there are a lot of keyboard shortcuts in Jupyter. So you're probably going to be excited about that. And you can check all of them here. And then you'll also see that there's a little user interface tour. So you can have a nice interactive tour on this option if you'd like. There's also some documentation here to Python and pandas, which you'll hear about in a bit. So this is a nice bookmark worthy area here. There's a lot of stuff that you'll refer to frequently on the help menu. Okay, so let's start here. You're going to see that we have these blocks. The idea with the Jupyter notebook is we've got cells that we can move around. I'm going to insert another one. I could keep inserting them and I can move them up and down. So it's almost like this modular block approach to working with code. And you'll see that you can build very nice interactive notebooks. I'm going to click this drop down here. There's going to be an option for Markdown. This is if you want text to be included in your notebook. So Jupyter notebooks don't just include code. We can put text in here. If you've ever worked with Markdown, you could do something like, you know, this is bold, this is italics, that's bold, that's italics. So depending on how many asterisks you're using. So I won't spend a lot of time with Markdown, but suffices to say you can build really nice, clean, and this looks like it could be on a website or in a word processing document. You can add text along with your code. So these are very easy to read. And again, I can move these around. A very modular approach to working with Python, but not just Python, because Jupyter can be run with lots of different languages. But this is not a class on Markdown or Jupyter notebooks. This is really a class on Python and analytics. So let's get into that, shall we? And we will start with the very, very beginning here. I'm going to add 1 and 1, and I'm going to run that, and I'm going to get 2. Not real exciting, but you're getting in the hang of working with Python and with Jupyter. I hit Control Enter to run that. And you're going to see that each time I run, you see the input and you see the output, that these are numbered. You can also come up here and run a cell that way. That'll bring you down to the next line. And I could just continue on here. I could do the order of operations, what have you. And it's just a fancy calculator. So just like Excel, you know, if you need to calculate a tip or tax or whatever, and you want to get more comfortable with Python, open up a notebook and just do your math here. It's little things like that that get you comfortable in working with the Jupyter Notebook and with Python. But this isn't real exciting, so we'll move on to the next step, which is something like a function, which you do in Excel all the time. So speaking of things that you already know all about having used Excel, a function is a good example. For example, I will take the absolute value, and this is even pretty much the same thing as it would be in Excel. Let's take the absolute value of minus 100. I could run it up here, Control Enter or Shift Enter. Shift Enter is going to insert a new block right under this one, but I got the absolute value of minus 100 easily enough. Looks pretty similar to Excel. One thing that's going to be a little different is that if I were to try something like this, which would work perfectly well in Excel, I could use the absolute value function. It can be uppercase, lowercase, what have you, and it's still going to work. It's not going to work here in Python. This is not defined. Python is a case-sensitive language. So generally, when you're working in Excel, the case of your function doesn't matter. In Python, it will for most things. I think probably for everything, Python is case-sensitive. So if you ever see something like this, make sure you're typing the right case that matches. It needs to be lowercase. And you can even see here in Jupyter that this is nicely lit up in green, whereas this is not, and that's a little warning sign that things aren't working well. So that's a function. There are a lot of different functions and ways to work in Jupyter Notebooks. One of the other big things that you're going to do is work with objects. So if you've ever worked in VBA or any other programming language, you're going to know that generally you're not going to just run things through functions like this. Usually you're going to assign your data to an object and then work on that object. And the way you're going to do that in Python is with an equal sign right here. So if I wanted to assign something to A, let's say I want to take the absolute value of minus 100, and I'm going to assign that to A. Now you can imagine that when you're doing this, it's almost like putting some piece of information, you're putting the absolute value of minus 100 almost into a box called A. So imagine doing that. And then what you'll do if you want to see what's in that box, it's almost like opening the box, right? You're just going to print it. And in Python and Jupyter Notebooks, all you need to do is add the name of the object that you're interested in. This is called printing. I'm going to run that, and we can see what's in there. And again, you know, I can continue working on that. So if I wanted to add 100 to A, I would do that. So we can mix and match objects, functions, operations, so on and so forth. This is just the real basic stuff on working with Python. I've got an example in our repo here that will get a little deeper into working with data analysis in Python, but this is just to get your feet wet and working with it. So I encourage you later on, you've got the link to the repo that's going to remain up. You can check it out if you don't want to download Python, or if you're on a computer that doesn't have it, just click the link. You can open up a notebook and just spin your wheels. And I encourage you to just do basic stuff like that to feel a little more comfortable with it. You've used Excel long enough probably that I wouldn't be too intimidated about learning Python. A lot of this probably looks pretty familiar to you. You've probably done something like this a million times, and you're going to do it a million times in Python too. So you'll get there. So I don't see any questions. If you have any, you're welcome to ask. We've got a few minutes left. Michael said that, you know, we can maybe go a few over if people are interested, and I'm okay with doing that myself. But let's keep going here. So this is an Untitled notebook. Once you leave your session, if you're working on the cloud, any work that you've done is just going to go away. I should say it's not going to remain, it's going to go away. So if you want to save it for whatever reason, you can just download it locally. Download, I think this will work if you're on Binder, I'm not sure. But you probably don't need to save anything. So just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. Okay, so let me see where I am in the slides here. We've already definitely got through that. Okay. So where am I? We've done that. We did not talk about R. You're welcome to do that if you'd like. We talked about this. We talked about doing the basics with the Jupyter Notebook, and here are the basic elements of it. We looked at the menu. There's some other, this is almost like your quick access toolbar, right, in Jupyter Notebooks. Here are your cells. You'll be doing most of the work in there. So we did that. Yeah, so let's do this Python for data analysis file. And then I think we'll take questions, and then I'll go through the conclusion. I'll take you through the other resources if you'd like to go through the other examples, and then we will call it a day after that. So let's do a notebook for data analysis in Python. This is going to show you how to work with packages. Packages are going to be really important when you get into Python. Pandas is going to be one that you'll hear about over and over if you get into Python. And like I have here on the next slide, not to go too far ahead, but it really appears that Python is going to become a built-in part of Excel. So you're in the right place to learn more. This is going to be really interesting when that happens, and it sounds like it's probably going to happen. So there's a lot of interest in it, and I understand why. And this will be a good introduction to doing some data analysis, because Pandas is going to be your go-to place for doing data analysis in Python. I'm also going to show you how to read and write files, particularly Excel files, in and out of Python. So what you'll want to do is go back to our repo here, Python for data analysis. This will be our last demo, and then I'll go through the resources and take questions and so forth. So you should find this in your repo here. I'm going to click through. You can just click that name and it's going to run it for you. Now, you're going to work with packages all the time in Python, especially for data analysis. Python was not really built to do data analysis, but it can easily do data analysis with some of these packages. Now, I'll talk about this a little more in the book about how to get your hands on packages and how they work. There are going to be a few steps that you need to take to get something like Pandas on your computer, but ultimately you're going to need to import that package into your session. So think of a smartphone app, right? If you want to use it, you need to do a couple things. First, you need to install it onto your phone. And then if you want to use that on your phone, you need to open it to use it. So it's a similar idea with a package in Python. You'll want to download it onto your computer, and then even once you've downloaded it, you still need to open it to use it. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm basically opening the Pandas app, or the package, so to speak, to work on that. So I'm going to do that. And then what I'm going to do is read in a workbook into Python. Now, generally, you're going to be reading data into Python. It's not like Excel where you store data in there and you work on it at the same time. Generally, in Python, you're just going to be working on the data. You're not really going to be storing it. And that data can come from anywhere, right? It could be images, video, databases, whatever. Because of the audience here, I'm working with an Excel file, which makes sense. So I'm going to read this in from the data sets folder. We were in there just a bit ago. I'm going to read in the census file. I'm going to specify what sheet name to include. So these are just arguments into the function, right? So you've worked with arguments and functions all the time in Excel. Something like VLOOKUP, you might have optional arguments or implied arguments. So same idea here. Where I'm going to read this in, and then I'm just going to specify with an optional argument that I want the census sheet name. And then I'm going to print the first few rows of that. So you're going to see this head method a lot when you're working in Python and in Pandas. You could work with very, very big data sets in Python, right? Python's known for data science and AI, where you're working with a huge amount of data. So you probably don't want to print all of it. We're just going to print the first few rows by using head. And that's what we'll see here. So I've got some data. There's a lot you can do with data analysis now. We're going to use Python and Pandas in particular to do some work here. Describe gets the descriptive statistics. These are all listed out. I have a table in my book kind of listing out some of these helpful ways to analyze a data set using Pandas, but I've got my descriptive statistics here. I can find the values and types. So when we're working in Python, I don't know why I'm getting an error there. I think, let's see what I'm doing wrong here. Info, okay. So there's that. I think I have a problem on my computer that I'm getting an error there. But anyway, you can find more information. I'm just going to skip that for right now. Sorry for the error. If other people are getting an error, I'd have to look into why I'm getting one there. But you get the idea. There are a lot of different ways to explore your data set in Pandas. What I'm going to do right now is calculate a column. Now, this is going to look pretty similar to Excel, right? We're working almost with a table, same idea. This is a data frame, very similar to an Excel table. And the notation is pretty similar too. We've got the name of the table, and then we've got these square brackets, then we've got the name of the column. So I'm going to create a calculated column. This looks a lot like what you would be doing in Excel. Same idea. I'm going to create that density column, and I've created it as the division of population and land area. So again, this should really ring a bell to what you do in Excel all the time. Now what I'm going to do is read in a second worksheet of that workbook. So all I needed to do is just specify a different argument for sheet name. We've got divisions now. I'm going to print the first few rows of that with head. And then what I'm going to do is merge. So if you've used Power Query, you probably love joins. You can do joins in Python just the same, left outer, right outer, etc. We can do a left outer join right here. I'm going to merge census and divisions. I'm going to use a left outer join to do that. And then I'm going to print the first few rows. So this is like a supercharged VLOOKUP, right? We get all of the matching fields and included in one table here. Very easy to do. It just took, a couple of lines and we have a nice left outer join here. Filtering, same idea here. If I just want to filter the data set to get the records in 2015, I'm going to use some conditional logic to do that. Find all of the rows in census where the year is equal to 2015. Now I'm going to do a quick spot check here. I'm going to find the unique values in the year column, and I can do that with this unique method here. So this is just a spot check to make sure that I'm only including 2015. I'm going to see that that's the case. I see here that the only type of data, the only value that I have in the resulting table or data frame is 2015. Now I'm going to do something similar to a pivot table here. I'm going to find let's run that. Basically what I'm doing here is getting the total population by region. So this looks very similar to putting this data into a pivot table. Again, all I have to do is specify what I want to group by and how I want to aggregate that result. So these are the same steps that you do all the time in Excel. We were doing it earlier in our pivot table. So I took our region and our population. I want to group that data set by region, and then I want to sum it or add it together, those records, and then I see the data right here. So this is just a little tour of doing some data analysis work in Python. A lot of the steps that you do all the time in Excel. What I'm going to do now is write this data out to Excel. So I'm going to name it census report. I'm going to name it analysis, the sheet name that is. I'm going to run that. And then let me go back to our repo here. There's going to be an output folder. You should have a file waiting for you. I'm going to download it. Just click that radio button there. And then you will get the results of that table here. Now, what you're going to see is that this result output is pretty ugly. And what I mean by that is I would like to see this brought out a little bit. Maybe you want this to get formatted in millions, so on and so forth. Now, you could do what I'm doing and go into Excel and do these changes manually, but you could also automate all of this in Python. So let's say you've done all of your work in Python, you want to bring it into an Excel report, and you want to clean all of this up, you want to format the numbers, you want to add a chart or do whatever. You can do all of that. Now that is and to take us into the remainder of the session, if you'd like to check it out on your own time, that is what this next notebook is going to show you, how to automate the production of an Excel report using Python, bringing some of the steps that we've taken in Pandas, and then formatting that output in Excel. So Pandas is really just for data analysis. It's not going to do very much to format an Excel report, but there are some Python packages that can actually help you to format stuff in Excel. So it's kind of like what VBA does in a sense, but there are some other things you can do with it too. So you can check that out. Okay, so there's that. We already did the book winning. I think I had one other resource in the repo. Let me check. Yeah, there was some stuff on R. That's what I was missing. So if you want to check out R, you can check out the stuff in the repo too. All right, and we've won the books. I see a question, so I will answer that in a second here. So here's my book, Advancing into Analytics. This is going to help you move into exploratory data analysis and hypothesis testing using a programming language. So not only are you going to learn Python and R, you're also going to learn a bit about using inferential statistics, how to work with linear regression, a little bit of what is kind of like machine learning at the very end of the sections on Python and R. So it's a lot of stuff, and not that big of a book. It's a couple hundred pages, but like I said, since you already have a really strong handle on Excel, and I have some things at the beginning of the book just to make sure that you're kind of on the right path there. If you're good with things like index and match, generating random numbers, working with pivot tables, if you were able to follow with some of the things that I was doing earlier, then you should be in a good place to get through the book. If not, I've got some resources in the book to kind of get you to a good place to check out that book. And like I said here, so if you head to stringfestanalytics.com/book, let me pull that up right now. If it opens. Okay, so this is my website. This is going to have some various bits of information. What I want to make sure you're aware of is that there is a code. There's a link right here. This is going to get you 30 days to read the book for free on the publisher's website. So you're welcome to do that if you'd like to just check it out. You can also buy it at all the usual places, and maybe there's another bookseller near you that buys it, but these are some of the places where I am that people usually buy books from. So check that out, and wherever you buy from, if you could leave a review, that's very, very helpful. Like I said, actually here, leave a review. Here are some questions you can answer if you're not sure what to leave in your review. It really helps out a lot. So whether you want to read it for free, whether you want to pick up your own copy, maybe you just want a copy today, you can leave a review with some of these questions. If you want to keep on learning about Python and R and Excel, then I would encourage you to check out these other books. So this is a book on R. This one gets into data analysis in Python. Python for Excel, this is a real deep dive into using Python to automate Excel and using those tools together. It doesn't get a lot into statistics and analytics. It's more about like automation and development, but that's still important stuff to know about. And that's going to keep you busy. These are all really popular books, and they're all kind of long. So I think that's enough homework for today. And leave a review for the book as another homework assignment, I guess. So there's that. Another thing that I wanted to make you aware of, if you head over to the website, again, that's stringfestanalytics.com, I have a 30 days to data analyst. So this is a checklist. If you sign up for my newsletter, you'll get a link to it when you're done with signing up. It's a little calendar. So every day you'll go through an activity on becoming a data analyst and just different things. So, we'll talk about RStudio. There's a little bit about SQL. I see a question about SQL in the comments here. So you can head to my website, stringfestanalytics.com. If you subscribe, you will get this checklist emailed to you. And that's been pretty popular. This is a new offer that I've included in the last week or two that's gotten a lot of interest. So I certainly encourage you to check that out. You can find me on LinkedIn as well at GJ Mount, or just type George Mount in the search bar. I'm sure you'll find me. And that is everything from me. So I will end my screen share and check out the comments, or the chat, I should say. Kingsley is asking about SQL scripts being run on Python. Yeah, so Kingsley, I would encourage you to check out, there's something called SQL Alchemy. That is a pretty popular package, just like Pandas is a package. SQL Alchemy is a package that's going to let you connect with databases and run SQL queries and work with databases inside of Python. So you can check out SQL Alchemy. I don't talk about that in the book, but I'm sure that there's some good resources. Nothing comes to mind right now on documentation for that, but just check that out. You'll probably find something. Yes, so thank you, Kingsley, for the question. If anybody else has questions, I'm taking them now.
Okay. So is that so? Thank you very much, George.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So is there anybody else any question in the house?
Thank you, Michael.
Anyone? Okay, I have a personal question I want to ask now.
Sure.
Okay. Now you made mention of automating process, like automating Excel process using Python in Excel.
Yeah.
So because I actually have a little bit of background in Excel, in Python also. I have a
Cool.
background in Python and Excel. So my question is, the Python automating process in Excel with Python, are you trying to like replace VBA, or is just something different entirely?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think everybody has their own opinion on that. Now, there are some elements in which you could do the same thing that VBA would do. And I think that's the example that I have in the repo. It's more of, how do you format columns and add a chart and do things that you might use VBA to do. There are some things that Python could do that maybe VBA couldn't necessarily. So thinking about actually including Python functions in Excel. So say, for example, I showed you the describe method. Maybe you could write your own function in Excel using, so I just want to make one. So I was using the tool pack earlier, but you could imagine making like your own function to do that. So there are a lot of use cases. I'm sure that somebody has some examples where VBA is doing something that Python couldn't. But I think that the nice thing about using Python is that it does connect to so many other different applications. It's often referred to as the glue of working with developers, right? Python kind of connects all of these different systems and applications together. So I think there are a lot of advantages to it. Now, I'm not a real experienced VBA developer, so I can't get into a lot of specifics about what VBA could do that Python couldn't, but coming at it from the Python side, I found that there's really nothing that I haven't been able to do with Excel from it. So we can leave it there. And then I see a question from Elvis. So you're welcome to come to the stage or leave it in the chat, however you'd like to ask Elvis.
Okay. Elvis. Okay.
Good afternoon, George.
Yes.
My question is a pretty short one. So I'm trying to. I saw you when you were using Jupyter. So I'm kind of a PyCharm user. So I was wondering, is there any advantage to that? Because there were some things you were doing when you were getting your output, which I know basically in PyCharm you might have to type print and do all those things. So I just wanted to know if there's an advantage to using Jupyter.
Yeah, that's a good question, Elvis. I don't really talk about in the book PyCharm that much. If you go to the Python for Excel book, Felix, who's the author, he shows you how to work with Visual Studio Code, which is another method. So there's a Python script, that's the py file extension, and then there's the Jupyter notebook, and they're different files. They both work with Python, but they work with it in different ways. I'm just using Jupyter Notebooks because it looks pretty, it's easy to get into, and you can build nice documents with Python code that are easy to tell a story with data in, because you can include images and text and all that stuff. Now, people have their opinions on whether working with a notebook or a script is really better. I think if you speak to a computer programming purist, a lot of them do have problems with notebooks because sometimes they can get a little messy to debug. So I think, for debugging purposes, working with a script in PyCharm is probably better. But if you're doing something like what we're doing, which is, data analysis, and you're trying to tell a story with what you do, then a notebook might be a better choice. So I don't know that there's really a better option. I think you can work with Jupyter Notebooks inside of PyCharm. I know you can for sure in Visual Studio Code. So that's the other thing. Often you're able to kind of mix and match all these different applications together in what you're doing. But that was a good call out to make people aware that there are other ways to work with Python than just Jupyter notebooks. So thank you, Elvis, for the question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so any other question else? Any other question? Going?
Yeah,
Okay,
I wanted to ask
George.
a question.
Oh, please, yeah.
Okay.
Good evening, Judge. Nice presentation. So I wanted to ask, what advantages or what data analysis can we use Python for that we can't use Excel?
Yeah, good question. So I would say that it can get kind of messy in Excel to do more advanced data analysis. So if you get into the book, I talk a little bit about things that, if, for example, you wanted to do a linear regression, things that you should check with your data first. So, are you missing any values? Are there any outliers? There's some basic assumptions that you want to check about your data. And you can do them in Excel, but I find that it gets a little messy. There are things that get into like linear and matrix algebra that you could do in Excel, but you have to use array formulas and you're just doing a lot of work rather than actually doing the analysis. You're doing a lot more math to get to that, business conclusion. So I think that Python can help with that. The other thing is that you can connect to so many other applications, like we talked about SQL databases, APIs. I mean, there's a lot. Python just opens the door to different sources of data, working with images or audio. So, some of that's kind of advanced, but I think one thing that is nice is that you can really blend the advantages of Python and Excel. And I think that the Python for Excel book does a really good job of showing you how to work with them together. Excel is really great as that interface for end users. So business users probably aren't going to want to run Python code to get the answer. They can get into Excel and work with it there. So it's really just a matter, again, it's such a common analyst rule is to know your audience, right? And whatever your audience is familiar with and what your objective is, the one tool or the other might be a better choice, but also you can use them together depending on what use case you have. So I hope that was kind of an answer. I know that was kind of a politician's answer too, but I won't say, we've talked about VBA, we've talked about Excel, we're talking about Python, and, the questions are which one's better, this and that. And I usually say, it kind of depends. And it does. But I think once you read these books, you'll have a pretty good takeaway of what to use when.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Samuel's hands is up. Samuel.
Yes, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah, I got stuck in between due to my network, but I just want to confirm if I'm doing the right thing when you're trying to tell us to install the add-in. So what options do you select under the data analysis tool? Is it histogram, or I saw so many options for the purpose of this class?
Yeah, so the analysis tool pack, I put a link in the chat early on. Let me see if I can find that. Yes. Okay, so it's here. You'll want to go to, are you on a Windows or Mac?
Windows.
Okay. Maybe I could even just share my screen briefly too. Okay. Options, add-ins. All right. I'm turning my screen share back on for a bit here. Okay, so you're gonna go, are you in options?
Yeah, I've actually done that. I've installed it.
Oh, okay. So you have the add-ins.
So, yes, so I want to know, when you were showing us, we have so many tools here. So I have histogram. Which one should I pick for the purpose of this class?
Okay.
Yeah, there's data analysis, and then I was using descriptive statistics.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I've gotten it.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of
you.
stuff in here. If you read the book, we're also going to use, there's one t-test, assuming unequal variances. This is going to answer the question that we were asking, which is there a difference in the sales price between these two groups? And that's what this menu would do. So if you check out the book, you'll use this one. I think those are the only other ones that we use. Correlation, I use that one too. So yeah, there's a lot going on in this menu. So there you can do some pretty serious statistics in Excel, and this data analysis tool pack does a lot toward that end. So thank you for the question, and I hope you enjoy using the tool pack.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you a lot. So, George, our last two questions before we close. I hope you still remember, right? Hello, George.
I'm sorry?
I
Yes,
said our last two questions before we end. The one I
I
had
did.
earlier. So the first question, can you just share your experience with us, like how you started your data analysis journey and everything in general?
Yeah, that's great. So I went to college for economics, and my first job was as a financial analyst. So it was a lot of data and a lot of Excel, and I just didn't feel prepared for it. I had kind of a business-like degree for economics, but I did not learn Excel like I needed to do my job. And it just felt like it really kept me behind, that I had to stay late and work a lot of extra hours to do things very manually in Excel, and it just seemed like I was making a lot of mistakes. I was getting in trouble at work because there were mistakes in my spreadsheets and things like that. So I just thought, I really need to get better at Excel. And for me, that took the form of starting a blog, because it just seemed like a good idea to document, hey, I learned this at work today. I'll write a post about it, that sort of thing. And it kept growing and growing from there, that, like I have the book now. I also got into other analytics topics, so things like Python and R and SQL, all these other tools, just because I'm interested in them, and I think that'll kind of be the answer to my next question that you'll ask. But as far as my journey, it was really not feeling prepared to do the job of an analyst and trying to teach that to myself. And then since I wrote all of that down, now I'm teaching it to others too. So that's been my journey with analytics.
Okay, that's cool. That's very nice. So, I want to ask again, do you have any advice for we here over in Africa? Like, we just starting, like, what advice can you give to us over here in Africa?
Yeah, that's a good one. So like I said, and we've talked about, if you think about all of the tools that we've discussed today, right? We've talked about Excel, R, Python, VBA, Power BI. I mean, I can't even list them on two hands probably. There's a lot of them out there. So what I would say is that, first of all, I had that slide on the data analytics stack. Let me see if I can find that really quickly, because I think that's a nice one to kind of guide your journey and what to learn. Yeah, I've got this pulled up quickly here. So this is from the book, and this is 4 types of tools that we use in data analysis. So we, spreadsheets, programming, databases, BI platforms. So I would say to, learn a little bit about each of these. Now, you're probably not going to become an expert in all of them. Like I myself, I say that I'm probably the strongest in these 2. I'm pretty good at databases. I'm really not the best at BI stuff, but that's okay. We can't all be experts at everything. And that's my other add-on there, is that just get into what you're enjoying. So, maybe you're going to learn Python from the book, and you just think it's really cool. You really enjoy data analysis and statistics, and maybe even a little bit of machine learning. Then that's great. I mean, move on and keep learning from that. Or maybe you really enjoy Power BI. You really like making dashboards, and you really like working with Power Query or Power Pivot. That's a good answer too. So, whatever you enjoy, just keep going, because these are all really valuable skills to have. So, often people ask something like, oh, should I learn Tableau, or should I learn Power BI, or should I learn Python, or should I learn R? I don't think there's really any good answer as long as you kind of cover all of the 4 tools that I just showed you. If you have some familiarity with all of them, once you have that, just continue learning what you like. And then there's going to be a demand for all of them. There's way too many tools. I mean, even as early as, like 10, 15 years ago, it was pretty much just Excel, right? For data analytics.
Yeah, sure.
And now there's Power Query, there's Office scripts, there's Power BI, and I'm just talking about Microsoft stuff now. I mean, think of all the, like all the different applications that Microsoft has, and nobody can become an expert in all of them. So it's really just a matter of finding one that you really enjoy.
So someone answers all, but I think we're way beyond time right now. So I think I have to. Jerry,
it's not going to take a long time, just 2 minutes, please.
Okay, please hurry up, please.
Thank you, Judge, for the presentation. My question is, as a data manager, you're trying to understand your data sets. And will you think it's better to use a spreadsheet, which is Excel, or will you think it's better to use Python for easy comprehension of one data set? Which do you think is better?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so I guess, again, depending on the use case, Power Query actually has a data profiler now that is good for that. So I would encourage you to check that out. Let me see if I can find that. Actually, I have a blog post about it.
Column profile.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to put something in the chat that I think would be a good resource if you're interested in just doing a quick profile of the data to see, what kind of missing values you have, basic distribution of the data. So check out that blog post. That's from a podcast that I was on, and it's an accompanying blog post. So that might be a good one. So thanks for that question, Jerry.
Well, thanks a lot, George. Thanks a lot. So I just want to ask you for one more thing. Now you came here today. I want to ask if in the future, whenever we invite you in the future, will you get chance to come around again?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, because I've really planned maybe in the nearest future, I might invite you again, just to come and talk and share more knowledge with us in the community.
Please, yeah, I'm happy to do that. And like I said, it sounds like there's going to be, and I know that Michael's an MVP, so he probably is holding out some information on us, and that's okay. But I think that there's going to be a pretty big announcement on Python and how it works with Excel. And I'm happy to, continue teaching on that topic if there's interest, if and when that happens.
Wow. So thank you very much, George. Thank you. We really appreciate it over here in Nigeria and everywhere. So thank you very much. I think we're done. We're done now. So thank you a lot. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. So
thank you, Tim Dayo. Thank you, Michael. And then as far as if you've won a book, then just send me an email and I will get that over to you. Let me know what country you're in too, and then I'll let you know in the next couple of days how I can get the book over to you. Also, like I said, stringfestanalytics.com is my website. I'll put that in the chat one last time. So you can learn more about the book there. You can get the download, the promo code to read it for free. You can also download that 30 Days to Data Analyst. So I'm giving you more than enough stuff to do. But yeah, check the website and see where. Okay, so yeah, Jerry, if you were one of the 3 winners, and I don't remember who the 3 winners were, but I can check the chat. Just send me an email and I can get it to you in one form or another. And then for everybody else, you kind of won a book because you can read it for free. So I guess that's your consolation prize.
Yeah, definitely.
So once again, thanks a lot. And to everybody who joined us today, we are very grateful. And to do a special mention, Jordan, it's a pleasant surprise to see you. I can see Jordan Goldmere.
Oh, cool.
We will reach out to you soon because we also would like to have you present 1 or 2 things to us. But George, it's been a very wonderful session. And I know that a lot of people are even already showing appreciation. Someone is asking for the download link, the recording link for the session. So that means people want to watch it again. They want to practice along and practice all what you've shared. So thanks a lot. And I know you will be in Australia this month, or is it?
That's right. Yeah. That is coming up. It's going to be Tuesday, my time. Let me see if I can find that link real quickly.
I think it's the one hosted by Fair.
Yeah, that is Danielle's.
Danielle.
So this is going to be a similar meetup this week, and I'm going to do something similar where I'm going to ask what of those 3 parts of the book, what people are most interested in. I'm assuming it's probably going to be the same 2 parts as today, but we'll see. And then we'll go from there. I'll give away a couple books. So if you didn't win a book tonight, I guess you can go to this one and maybe have another chance. And yeah, so, and that one I think is recorded and all that stuff too. But thanks for plugging my event. That's something I forgot about.
No, you're welcome. And so let's let you go. Have a nice Sunday.
Thank you. You too,
Thank you very much. And bye to you. Bye to everyone. And
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Timidayo.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone, for coming.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.